Hi, this is Mrs. Young, and today we are going to start the review of our three-dimensional unit where we've been talking a lot about surface area and volume of different three-dimensional figures. So kind of a start of our review of this unit that we've been covering. Right now, I'd like you to go ahead and work on these two bell ringer problems. Our last lesson was on spheres, so this is kind of a review of that. In number one, you have to find the volume and surface area of the shape. It's a hemisphere on top of a cylinder. Also, remember when you're going to find surface area that it's hollow in the middle. Number two is just a hemisphere. Again, I want you to find the volume and the surface area of that hemisphere. So pause the video and go ahead and practice finding those volumes and surface areas. So starting with number one, the volume is the easier one, so I'm going to start with that. The volume is the volume of the hemisphere, or half the sphere, right? That's the shape on top here. So I have half of 4/3 pi r cubed. Don't forget r is cubed in volume. Or instead of 1/2 times 4/3, you could have just said 2/3 pi r cubed. So for the volume of that hemisphere, it's 486 pi. And then on the bottom, we have a cylinder. The volume of that is 36 pi. And when I add those two pieces together, I got 522 pi centimeters cubed. So again, volume is the easier part. The other part of this problem, you had to find the surface area. So for the surface area of the cylinder at the bottom, I have 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. This is the formula for the surface area of a cylinder. But instead, you notice that I crossed it out because I was going to have to, I don't have a top on that cylinder. And the bottom circle is like a circle I would have to cut out of the bottom side of that hemisphere. So I just went with the lateral of the cylinder, 24 pi. And then for my hemisphere, I have like the dome shape, right? Again, the surface area of a sphere is 4 pi r squared, but I have half of that, so that's 2 pi r squared. And then you also have this circle on the bottom of your hemisphere, right? That circle on the bottom, that's pi r squared, that's a circle, right? And that had a radius of 9, so that was 81 pi. Again, I would have had to subtract this little circle from the underneath side of the hemisphere, but instead, that's why I just crossed it out right there. So I have the I went with my three pieces added together, the dome shape, the circle on the bottom, and then the lateral of my cylinder, and I have 267 pi centimeters squared. Again, that's the surface area of that composite figure. Next, for the shape on the right, a little bit easier. It's just a hemisphere. So my volume, half of 4/3 pi r cubed, I came up with 23,958 pi feet cubed. That's my volume. Then for the surface area, again, you have the dome shape, half of 4 pi r squared, but then you also have that circle on the bottom. So that's pi r squared. The base is pi r squared. And then when I add those together, I came up with 3,267 pi. So then I added together the dome, 2 pi r squared, and then the bottom of the hemisphere, and then I got 3,267 pi. So just check over your answers. And then next, because we're reviewing for an assessment that we have coming up, just somewhere in your spiral or in your notes, wherever you're taking notes on paper, we're going to write down what's going to be on our assessment coming up. So typically we have the 4 leveled problems, level 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'd suggest maybe pause the video and go ahead and write this down. And then I'll kind of talk about what it's going to go over. So go ahead and pause it and write down this information. Okay, so what we're probably going to do, because this is going to be counting as a formative for us, I decided that I'm going to break this assessment up into 2 different days. So we'll do part of it on one day and part of it on a second day. And again, it's going to be counting as a formative right now. So I think what I will do is put the level 1 and 4 problems together, and this will be one day. And then I'll put the level 2 and 3 problems together, and that'll be another day. in a formative. When it says level 1, name the figure and match the terms to the shapes, there was a lot of vocabulary in this unit that you have to know and be aware of. So if you want to, you maybe would want to copy down these terms and just make sure that you're familiar with them or comfortable with them. Again, you can pause the video if you need to or would like to and get these copied down. So here you'd be matching the terms to a shape or a figure. Make sure you know what an edge is, or a face, or a base. What do we mean by height or vertex? So make sure you're very comfortable with all these terms. Also, just be careful that you know what they mean in a problem. If I'm saying find the lateral face or the lateral edge, make sure that you know what we're talking about. You might have to go back into your packet and look at some of these terms to help you out if you need to. So that's kind of the level 1 stuff. Level 2 is volume of these shapes. And then 3 will be surface area of those same types of shapes. And then level 4 is going to be volume and surface area of a composite figure. I can't remember if there's 1 or 2 problems in the level 4 section. There might be more than 1. But make sure that you can find volume and surface area. So again, I'll be putting the level 1 and 4 together on one day, the level 2 and 3 together on another day, and then we'll combine it all together to give us our formative grade. Notice in this unit, we did talk about Euler's formula or the distance or midpoint formula in 3D land. Those are not going to be on this assessment. So I'm kind of just paring it down to the basics for our assessment that we have later on next week. Okay. Let's go ahead and try just a couple of practice problems. Not a lot, just a couple. So here's 3 practice problems. 1 is finding the volume of a cylinder. 2 is finding the volume of a sphere. And then the third one is the surface area and volume of a composite figure. So go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and try to calculate the answers to each of these problems. Okay, so in number 1, it said find the volume of a cylinder with a base area of 25 pi. So again, the area of the base of a cylinder is a circle. The circle is pi r squared, so we know the radius is 5 because 5 squared is 25. The height is twice the radius, so 2 times 5 is 10. My height is 10. So using that height and radius, I came up with a volume of, in terms of pi, it was 250 pi, but then it also did say to the nearest tenth, so that would be 785.4 inches cubed. In number 3, we want the volume of a sphere with a great circle that has an area of 36 pi. That means that our radius is 6. 6 squared is 36. And then finding the volume of a sphere, it's 4/3 pi r cubed. So 4/3 times pi times 6 cubed is 288 pi. And again, this one they wanted in terms of pi. The last one here was a composite figure. It was a right cylinder with a smaller right cylinder cut out from the center of the top. I'm going to go over volume first because I think that's the easier one. So the volume of this big cylinder, again, it had a radius of 10 and a height of 30. So that's a volume of 3,000 pi. And then there's this little cylinder that's been cut out of the top. So there's like an opening here in the top of that. So when I subtract out the 200 pi, I got 2,800 pi centimeters cubed. So that's my volume. Again, it was a big cylinder with a smaller cylinder cut out from the top, the center of the top. Now, surface area is going to be a little bit trickier. You have the lateral surface area around the outside of that cylinder. You have a bottom and a top, but then you have a little circle cut out of the top. And then for the smaller cylinder, you have the lateral surface going around the middle. You have a bottom to it, but not a top. So you could have one base here, but not a base on top. Or you could think of this as being like a little circle cut out and moved up to the top, right? So I don't know how you want to think about it or look at it. So I did, my big cylinder, the lateral was 600 pi, and then the 2 bases was 200 pi. So that big cylinder gave me a surface area of 800 pi. The small cylinder, I had the lateral 80 pi, and then the one base was 25 pi, so that gave me 105 pi. I still had to go back and cut a little circle out of the top of my big cylinder on top. So I cut out or subtracted out the 25 pi. So 800 pi plus 105 pi minus 25 pi gave me 880 pi. Another way that I have seen students do this, instead of adding in the 25 pi and then subtracting it out here, they just don't even show that. And then they just add, sorry, they just add the 800 pi, sorry, and the 80 pi together. That's how they got 880 pi. So if you didn't want to add in the 25 pi and then subtract it later, you could also do it that way. Again, just to break it down for you though, I showed each step or each piece of that process. Finally, I'm just going to go ahead and finish up kind of a short video today because I wanted to give you a little bit more time to work on your homework. Our homework is going to be on page 53 of our packet. I did alter it from your original stamp sheet, and I'm also going out of order from your stamp sheet. So this is page 53, 1 through 3, and then 10 through 22. Notice that I took out 7, 8, and 9 because we don't have distance and midpoint formula on our assessment. Also notice that I skipped over the formative. We're not going to be taking a second formative in this unit. Instead, we're just going to probably take an extra day to review for the 2-day formative that we'll have next week. Okay, so again, kind of going out of order on my stamp sheet. So go ahead and work on your homework. Make sure that you get it turned into me, and then reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. Thanks.